We're in the book of Second Corinthians, and we popped over to chapter 1 for a minute, and I really have been kind of stuck on chapter 4, but chapter 5 and chapter 6, and well, all the book of Corinthians is good. And how the book of Corinthians happened to be written. It was written by a guy who was Paul the Apostle, and through the Holy Spirit. And he was writing to a group of people that faced everything he faced, which were the problems and the troubles and the cares and the things of this world. He listed a couple of them in verse 3 here in chapter 5, in apparels, in clothing. Sometimes we have to go if we're following the Lord, even if we're not following the Lord. But go without. I remember growing up, we didn't get anything but hand-me-down clothes and barrels of clothing. Well, what was the deal? Well, my daddy didn't seek out to have the prosperity of the world where he could put us children in good clothes all the time. His desire was to follow God in a meager sense, and he did. And we got hand-me-downs most of the time. So what could you say, Brother Peter? As far as the world was concerned, I was in clothing, in apparel. I didn't have much of it. And then he said, in other things, he said, in patience. Patience. Patience is a virtue. Do you know that if you pray for patience, do you know what the Bible said? The Bible said, tribulation worketh patience. You want patience? Get in your car. Go downtown. Any small town. Go downtown. And say, I'm running just a fraction late here, and I'm supposed to meet somebody at 12 o'clock sharp. And it's 10 minutes till 12, and it's going to take me 10 full minutes to get where I'm going, and I catch the first red light. And I'm behind another car, and the light turns green, and there's somebody sitting in that car in the mirror, and they're doing their eyebrows. And they're primping a little bit in the mirror, and they hadn't realized the light turned green yet, so you get a little bit frustrated. And you're going to do your first sin now today. You're going to be upset. And right here, impatience, it says in verse 4, you are tried by your patience. That we should be patient and not be impatient and just sit there and wait. Because you're not going to move until they move, whoever they are, and working in the mirror. And afflictions. Afflictions. I don't do good with affliction sometimes. There are some type of afflictions when a big company afflicts me. I don't like it. When I go to a big, well-known cooperative store, great big one, and they have the shelves covered with stuff that is marketed to sell one time and won't last. Sometime the first time you use it, you can go in there and buy a pack of Phillips head screwdrivers, which I do this on a regular basis, and you have to be careful today, because you can buy a pack of 4 and pay $5 for them and get them to the job, and all 4 of them within an hour, you got to throw them away because they're no good, because they won't take the strain that you can put on a screw with them. And they're made inferior, and they're made to sell one time. What is that big company's main thing about that is they know you're not going to bring them back. You may never buy another pack, but they could care less. They're to sell to the average homeowner. They're not to sell to the workman. And the average homeowner will take a hand screwdriver and stick one in it and screw a screw in the wall maybe one time or something. They may only use one out of the 4, and doesn't mind paying $1.19 for it. and plus tax. And so there again, here's a company that can sell you inferior products all day long, can sell you stuff. It's like buying off of the shopping place on the internet where they send you something that absolutely, positively, 100% will not work. That man does miracles with it on that. When you get it, it absolutely will not do what he does with it on that. And it has took him months to be able to learn, to be able how to dupe the public with that one piece of something that doesn't work. So you get it and it's no good. It's not worth the box it came in. But they know you're not going to send it back. They know you paid $19.95 and you're just going to write it off. Well, this one wasn't good, but the next thing I buy might be. And if you continue that, you'll spend $19.95 the 12 months out of the year and get 12 things that won't work. And so anyway, we are perplexed. We are in necessities, or we're left in distresses. Sometimes we're left in distresses, and I don't particularly like being distressed in some things. I'm a self-made, self-employed, self-made person, and the things I have around me, I make them work, and I make them where they won't distress another person either. And but we're in distresses, and Paul in that day, he wrote that he was distressed in floggings. He got flogged several times, and we today don't flog much because in the United States of America, if you flog somebody, they think it's invading their rights. But there was a time in America when if a man beat his wife, they'd take him out and chain him to a tree and beat him good, flog him good, and then turn him loose. He didn't beat his wife anymore. And sometimes we, all of us, need a good flogging. My daddy knew how to give me one, and it worked too. And imprisonments. Paul the Apostle was thrown in prison for preaching the gospel. We're coming to the day where even I, sitting in front of this machine doing these little things on the YouTube, may end up having to go to prison for one of them or all of them, or even saying the name Jesus. I've already been in one state where I went out and witnessed for Jesus Christ, and a man came against me and told me, he said, "You do that again here, and I'm going to see that you go to jail." All I said was, Jesus is the way, he's the truth and the life. And any man come to him, he can ask the Lord to forgive him of his sin, come in his heart, and go to heaven. And the guy said, "You can't say that around here. You can't do that around here." All right. In turmoils, Paul said in turmoils, he said, "You Corinthians," he said, "I've had all of these. You're going to have some turmoils in labors. You're going to have to labor. You're going to have to do some labor." Do you know, to have a friend is labor? You really want a friend? If you want a friend's going to cost you. Friends cost. They cost time. They cost money. They cost a lot of things. Be very careful. I like to have a lot of friends, but a lot of friends cost a lot of time, and cost a lot of money, and cost a lot of everything. So, but friends are good. And fastings, he said. Fasting, that's going without food for a day or two or three and not eating any food. So he said, we're surrounded by these things that we need to do. If we're Christians, if we're following God, we're going to have these things, and we're going to have, sometimes we have to do some fastings, and then and watching, he said, and watchings. What are watching? Watchings are those where you watch those folks who you've won to the Lord, and you go out, you visit them, and you make sure that they're on the right road, and you work with them, and you help them in their daily